Hello. This week, we're looking at the business of crypto through a new book by the American journalist Zeke Faux. It's called Number Go Up. It's had great reviews, and it covers things like Tether, DeFi, Bitcoin in El Salvador, Bored Apes, and FTX, subjects which supporters of Bitcoin SV will always try to tell people have nothing to do with Bitcoin SV. Well, maybe we'll find some connections today. I'm joined by two distinguished BSV entrepreneurs, Jack Pitt, the founder of SLictionary, and Brendan Lee, founder of Elas. So welcome both, gentlemen.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
You're listening to CoinGeek Conversations with Charles Miller.
Jack has had to get up early for breakfast to talk to us from the United States. And Brendan, it's probably past your bedtime in Australia. So
Almost.
Thanks for doing that. For me, it's just coming up to lunch in London. So it's very good of you. So the book, it looks like you might call him Zeke Faux, but he says he's very clear on Twitter that he pronounces it Fox. So that's what I'm calling him. What did you make, Jack, of the kind of format of the way he was telling the story to start with?
I like a very informal style, so I really enjoyed it. It showed his kind of first-person trip through the story. And since the most valuable thing he did was dedication to meeting the people that were the characters in the book, I think that reflected well in the way he told the story in that informal first-person narrative, because he himself was a character in the book.
Yeah, I mean, Brendan, you had to be impressed with the access that he managed to get.
You know, he managed to get into the offices of several of these really high-flying crypto executives. And I mean, it kind of reads like a bit of an adventure. You know, he'll end one chapter and go, well, the next clue was leading me to Nassau or wherever, and then he's jetting over there and being driven around or whatever's going on. You know, I really enjoyed. I have to confess, I haven't quite finished reading it, but you know, every part of it that I've read so far has really, you know, it's just kept me coming back.
It's a first-person narrative, and although we know that he's a journalist for Bloomberg Businessweek, and he refers to the fact that some of this material has actually already been published on Bloomberg, he strung the different episodes together, as you say, like a journey. So he's on this kind of quest, and we're with him on the journey, rather than it being a more sort of detached form of storytelling.
Well, it also worked out well because he starts off doing an article about Sam Bankman-Fried, which is very puffy, and then he finishes the book with going to Sam Bankman-Fried's Bahamas chalet and interviewing him right before he's about to be handcuffed. So he goes from very innocent to, you know, more savvy, as the whole world did. So he kind of reflects what everybody thinks about crypto, really.
Yeah, I spotted that as well. And he quotes his first article on SBF. And he says that FTX, quote, seemed like a thought experiment from a college philosophy seminar come to life, which is a nice, very nice line. And then when, as you say, when he revisits that later on, he is critical of his tone, and he says that he should have asked whether FTX was a scam from the start. So, yeah, very honest and very open in his reporting as far as we can see.
I thought it was very interesting that in that very first article, Sam Bankman-Fried basically looks at him and very deadpan says, or it could all just be a big scam. And, you know, essentially tells the truth that really it is a big scam. But then completely ignores that fact and continues to pretend that it isn't and that he's changing the world. So I thought that was quite an interesting tell of, you know, what was going on behind the wild hair and poor dress sense.
Well, let's broaden it out to the other parts of the book, because it's not all about FTX. There were plenty of other sort of expeditions involved, going to Cambodia, and Tether is a central theme, that he sort of cannot drop this quest to try to discover where the money that goes into Tether has been put. And he never quite cracks that, actually. But, I mean, Brendan, would you agree with the writer that Tether is perhaps the key to the whole of this kind of crypto world? Because it is,
absolutely.
at one point, it was supposed to be worth $68 billion, which seems absolutely incredible. That would mean that money had been paid into Tether away from the rest of the economy. But
and there should have been a bank account with $68 billion in it. But you see at various points in the book when he's going and he's talking to Alex Mashinsky and he's talking to SBF, and they're both confessing to him, yeah, we know that Tether doesn't have dollar for dollar. And in fact, if Tether had to sell all of the weird stuff that they use to back Tether, they might get well less than 90 cents on the dollar. And, it's long been a suspicion of mine, and I suspect John's and a lot of people in the BSV community as well, that the Tether actually, there's not much money there at all. And in fact, on these days, I remember back in kind of, like 2020, 2021, there'd be days where you would just see the balance of Tether go up by kind of $2 billion a day. And, there's no one depositing $2 billion in a bank account somewhere to make Tethers. And the way that it works, they can just go $2 billion and boop, the tokens appear, and they can inject that straight into the crypto market and inflate the balloon. And, when Bitfinex got hacked, they needed to recover the money somehow, and they could do that by pumping the market and skimming off the top.
I mean, Tether's not the only example of this. There's always been the phrase, the license to print money. Well, in crypto, you don't need a license.
It's not even a license.
And you don't even need to print it. So it's
I would actually like to be a little controversial here, because I've been saying this since even before the Terra Luna disaster that caused a mini run on Tether. And when that happened, I know some of these guys that he mentions, these hedge fund guys that are looking to short Tether, and advised people not to. And the reason is because I do think that Tether is backed in a way. I think the number you see on something like CoinMarketCap or Masari that shows that they're worth $84 billion is actually backed. I think that's the treasure chest of CZ and the Tether guys, Devasani and Sam Bankman-Fried. And I think the biggest mistake that regulators and shorts and all these people who are trying to pepper Tether with FUD, as they call it, what they're missing is they're looking at the pirate's treasure box and thinking they need to audit it. But the treasure box is the treasure box. It's the money they've made over the last 6 years, and they've made it as quick as any criminal has ever made it, similar to Pablo Escobar. But what they need to audit is not what's backing the treasure chest. They need to audit how the treasure chest was obtained, which means they need an audit of Binance. They need an audit of Bitfinex and an audit of Tether to find out what trades were being made, how they were being made, and what dirty people they were trading with, and how they were manipulating prices to basically make themselves all that money. These concepts that have been proven for hundreds of years, dating back to, back when, if you read the book, the robber barons, they're printing shares in their basement for Erie Railroad in one good chapter. These concepts have been going on for ages, dating back to as far back as finance has been around. And yet we keep making the same mistake of thinking that the crooks somehow don't end up with the money, but they do. And they're auditing the wrong thing. And that's what I think is the mistake everybody's making. And that's why I predicted that Tether wouldn't go away when Terra Luna bank runs occurred.
But one thing that surprises me is that if all this money in Tether and in other cryptos is, as you say, in some sense, real money, why is that not having a very bad effect on the rest of the economy? Because it's a significant amount of money, isn't it? I mean, why? What would this money be doing? Wouldn't it be doing something useful that is not happening as a result of the existence of the crypto world?
That's a really interesting question. I think, a lot of this kind of crypto money is I don't know. It's almost like it seems to have come out of nowhere. You end up with these. So someone creates a coin, they generate 50 million of them, for example. They sell 1 million for $1 each, and then all of a sudden that's now worth $50 million. And they can park that behind Tether and go, there's $50 million backing Tether.
Right,
So
but it's not really money. You couldn't ever get that money back into US dollars.
And only $1 million has actually been extracted out of the cash economy, the dollar economy. But we've somehow generated $50 million of funny money in the crypto economy.
Brendan's exactly right. And if you look at the FTT token that Sam Bankman-Fried causes him lots of trouble because CZ at the critical moment announces he's going to sell all the. Think of FTT tokens as like Sam Bankman-Fried's stock, even though it doesn't work like stock at all. It's much worse. But it's basically treated as such. And it's worth a ton of money at the time that it's being sold off. But it really never achieved such a status. It, like Brendan said, they just sold some of it on the exchange and they can wash trade the price up to make it look like a giant number, but it's really not real.
Right. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of when a startup gets an injection of investment money that values the company at, $100 million, but actually it's only got, $3 million in. And that 100 million would be only a kind of as if the rest of it was to be provided at the same rate.
Precisely, but one big difference, Charles, and that's an equity ownership means you have rights to the profits of the company. And so technically the value of a stock, even from day one, is supposed to be based on how much money that stock can pay you back in dividends or cash flows, earnings, essentially. Whereas this crypto stuff has no basis in producing any kind of interest or income or dividends. And that's what separates cryptocurrency from everything else and makes it very bubblicious, shall we say.
Well, one of the rather, I found the most gripping parts of the book was when he got involved with Bored Apes Yacht Club and risked $20,000 of his own money to buy an ape in order to get into a party with the thought that he was going to sell it again as soon as he had been to the party. And he tells us that he had to explain this to his wife, who was actually surprisingly supportive of the idea, and the terribly difficult business of buying this thing and worrying that the $20,000 had got lost somewhere in the system because it had to jump from different entities across all sorts of kind of peculiar things until he finally got it. What did you make of that bit? Did you find that interesting, Brendan?
I do like the anecdote that where he's bought the snot-faced ape and the guy's like, "Oh, I would have touched that," because it's got.
He couldn't afford a nice ape.
No, that's right. But I find the whole Bored Ape kind of hype cycle, which I think really has largely ended now, it seems, to be one of the strangest things that's happened in crypto, and not just the hype cycle, but the whole there was a spate of people who were having their Bored Apes stolen, and in one quite famous example was the Seth Green, who is like a comedian and makes TV shows and stuff like that. And he bought an ape, and he was actually planning to make a TV show about it. And about 2 weeks before the show was meant to launch, someone pinched his ape out of his wallet and then listed it for sale and sold it. And then the person who bought it then relisted it for sale, and the price of it was going up. And he kind of was sitting there going, hey, you guys who run the exchange, can you please get my ape back? And they just basically told him, no, there's nothing we can do. Not your keys, not your ape, apparently.
The apes thing was just one example of NFT craziness, wasn't it? I mean, and is that all behind us now, do you think, Jack?
Well, I think that the funniest thing about the NFT craze is the levels of idiocracy behind it. So, first of all, the pictures themselves aren't even on the Ethereum blockchain, and yet the funny thing about these NFTs is they have to be really low 1980s quality pictures. So they're like, you know, when you show an adult Minecraft, they always laugh and they're like, what have we moved backwards 40 years in video quality? And it's the same thing here. These apes are basically like 1985 pixelated pictures with very poor quality stuff that reminds me of the 1980s.
Is it just a sort of like a style thing, and you know that it's sort of?
I think it's a style thing. I mean, I actually think that the artists who make these are pretty lazy. Yeah, they got one shape, and then they make 10 different mouths and 10 different hairstyles and 10 noses and 10 eyebrows and ears and whatever, and then they just compute all the random variations, and then that's how they make. And so I was reading about these people who were creating NFTs, and they were paying the artists, you know, like $10 to create all of this material, and then going and making $10 million from selling them all. And, you know, it's not just lazy, but it's exploitative.
Well, talking about exploitation, one of the most sort of shocking parts of the book was when he went to Cambodia and found people who were workers basically imprisoned and forced to try to chat up. Well, people like him, he'd had a text from somebody claiming to be a woman who the idea is that it was a scam, that eventually after a lot of chat, she would be talking about how much money she'd made on crypto, and in the end it was, please send me some money, just go to Tether and get it here. I mean, this was pretty, you know, excellent investigative reporting, I would say. And I wonder, I suppose my question is, how much should the world of crypto and Tether in particular be blamed for the way in which it's been used? I mean, in the same way that Silk Road is Bitcoin and anybody associated with Bitcoin responsible for what Silk Road did in terms of selling drugs and things.
I have been contacted by people who I'm pretty sure, you know, reading that, pretty sure that was what was happening, and multiple times, and, you know, over 3 or 4 years, people will just contact you on Telegram or on WhatsApp. You know, somehow they get your details, and I just block them straight away. You know, I used to think they were people who wanted to ask a question, but it would very quickly, you know, the conversation would take a turn, and that's when I would jump out. But I don't think that it is isolated to crypto. You know, catfishing in this way is a scam as old as money.
Email is famous for it as well.
Yeah, it was happening a long time before cryptocurrency ever came out. So, I mean, I don't think you can really put any of the blame for that type of exploitation, you know, directly onto the people running the cryptocurrency. But what has been created is a vehicle through which it's exceptionally easy to have that money delivered to you and then be able to, you know, transfer it into some other money.
I would agree with both of you on the aspect that the crypto companies aren't responsible for people using it badly. However, Zeke points out in the book very well that it wasn't so much that, it was the fact that when they wanted to cash out these bad characters, they told you that it was easier to do it via crypto. He goes to Cambodia, and the people he talks to are basically like, yeah, this is great for the crime stuff we're running, because when we want to cash out, we don't even need a passport. We don't need any KYC. Binance, I think the one guy, he said he was basically Taylor Swift, and he dressed up in drag to basically imitate a customer account. And I think that's where it's not necessarily the exchanges would be considered the crypto currencies, but the exchanges are a big part of this. And I think that's, again, where the focus of maybe the next book should be, which is not that the crypto's phony or not backed, but that these characters who have first adopted it are basically doing really old scams and resurfacing them, and crypto has made it easier for them.
Anyone who's interested in Bitcoin SV may be wondering whether there's any reference to it, or indeed Dr. Craig Wright in this book, and the answer is no, not at all. And there's one funny bit that I thought talking about the bankruptcy of FTX. It was, quote, the biggest news that crypto had ever seen. It was as if Satoshi Nakamoto's identity was finally revealed. Well, I mean, did it make you think, gosh, Bitcoin SV is a bit of a small fish in a big pond here, that a guy who's been studying this subject for a long time and knows a lot about it doesn't even think it is worth a mention, or even the split with BCH and anything like that? I mean, we just don't figure at all.
I would say that BSV is the only fish in the pond, and he's there studying invertebrates.
Well, that's very loyal of you, Brendan. But I mean, is that it? I mean, what do you think, Jack?
I thought I was going to hate the book because the first chapter or two, he's trying to explain Bitcoin to his audience. And I wrote so many notes down about things that he got wrong that I just thought, how am I going to get through this book? He's so off base that it's hard to even help him, because he's obviously paying attention to the way BTC works. And he's not incorrect about that. It's not that he's wrong about the subject matter. It's just that he doesn't know that there's something that actually works like the original Bitcoin from the white paper. And you almost want to reach out and help him. And in fact, I would love to get him to be a celebrity donor with some words from his book, and then teach him through our app, like how this stuff really works. He's really outlined well the dark side of this whole thing, but he has no clue that there's actually a possibility that this stuff can work and work for good. And he needs someone to guide him.
I'm just not convinced that if he did turn his attention to Bitcoin SV, it would come out all that well. If you think about, Craig's multiple court cases, I won't go on, but there's plenty of color for an entertaining book about BSV that would not necessarily end up feeling particularly impressed by what has been achieved so far.
I think you're right, but let's give him an app to work with that he would understand in his own profession, and show him that way. Let's not do the first thing that everybody does, which is they hear a good story about BSV, they love it, they're like, wow, that makes complete sense, and then they go do a little bit of research and they read about all this skulduggery, and then they go away. And I think that's a common story, but if we just show them the apps, I think that they'll get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The kind of, skulduggery that's happening in BSV is quite vastly different to the kinds of skulduggery that happens in the crypto market. There's
less money around, definitely.
Yeah, no one has absconded with hundreds of millions of dollars. Not that there's hundreds of millions of dollars to abscond with.
I suppose I sort of slightly hesitated when I read the thing that one sentence he wrote. Even at the peak of the boom, Many of the crypto boosters I interviewed would tell me that most coins were scams, just not theirs. Isn't that kind of where we are?
Yeah, but I think it's different. You can actually prove that yours is not a scam in the way that all the others are failing. For instance, when we talked about the NFTs, it's like, well, if you're going to have an immutable ledger and have it be this new database that no one's ever seen that can be timestamped and not doctored, you can show that. And I think we have apps in real Bitcoin, ticker symbol BSV, that do that. And if people just look at the app and focus on that rather than this number go up crypto casino, then they would find it. But, money's really, really loud. And I think we meaning the Bitcoin community, have attracted all the wrong characters to move the technology forward. I mean that from a customer standpoint. I mean it from a developer standpoint. I mean, which developer out of college, MIT or Harvard, isn't going to be tempted by being able to turn your resume into $2 billion quickly overnight versus trying to do something extremely hard like compete with Oxford English Dictionary or revolutionize accounting. I mean, those are very hard things to do. You got a lot of selling to do, and you've got to talk to, lots of companies and customers, and it's hard work. You have to focus on real apps, and who knows when that'll happen, but hopefully soon.
Brendan, do you ever have doubts, profound doubts about what you're doing?
Oh, look, all the time. But what I don't have any doubts about is that the underlying Bitcoin that we use is capable of doing all of the things that we say that it can do. But really the doubts come about through how we're executing on that vision.
Jack talks about all the hard work. It is simply not a technology that sells itself through people just seeing it, is it? I mean, it's more complicated than that.
And when you can go, just over the fence and see people spinning up things that make $50 million in 3 weeks, of course everyone's going to go over there, and being here and toiling away for years and years and years for nickels to their Benjamins is really hard to watch and hard to experience. But I mean, we can all come out of this knowing that we fought the good fight, and that's the way I look at it. And really, if you're not looking at it that way, you should go over there.
Final word, Jack.
When you go into a casino, Charles, what's the loudest, most exciting part of the casino?
The sound of money coming out of the machine.
Yeah, that's the simplest game. And the next simplest is craps. It's a game where you bet on die rolls from 1 to 12. If that isn't the dumbest game ever created. Now, if you put a Monopoly board or Dark to Light or some like adult game that's actually kind of fun, like just without having to gamble on it, in the casino, no one would be there, right? They would all still be pulling the levers and yelling at the top of their lungs about whether the number was 1, 6, or 12, right?
Right.
And that's just the loudness of the stupidity of what we've done for the last several years in this cryptocurrency universe. And I think you're going to walk in the casino and you're going to pay attention to the loud thing. But once the loud thing kind of dies off and we realize that it's scammy and bad and everything else, well, then maybe you'll start to pay attention to the game that actually is real and is fun naturally. And I think that's that point where we're getting to. And I think the same thing happened with the internet, right? I mean, you and I lived through the .com era, and it was 2,000 really weird companies that didn't make any sense. And out of that came a few that actually worked and I think changed the world. So I think the same thing's happening here. It's just going to take some time to see the good emerge from the muck.
Right. Brilliant. Well, look, we've been talking about number go up. Final word, one word answer from each of you. Are you recommending your friends and family to buy and read?
Absolutely.
Check?
Yes, but I want Zeke to be the celebrity auction off number go up on SLictionary so that we can help him market it.
Great. No, I thought it was a really good read. It takes you through the whole journey really well. And some of the, one thing that we didn't discuss was Axie Infinity, and he goes into that really well and covers that whole play to win kind of scam, which is a whole part of this as well. I just thought it was a really well written book. So yeah, highly recommend.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both so much for getting up early and staying up late. And it's been really fun talking to you. So bye for now.
Been a pleasure.
Thanks, Charles.
Thanks very much to Jack Pitts and Brendan Lee. And thank you for listening. And please join me, Charles Miller, next week for another CoinGeek conversation.
Hey everybody, I'm Kurt Wooker Jr. Join us live on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you can ask me questions, comments, blessings, cursings, gripes, or gropes. You can catch us live across CoinGeek's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and probably a whole bunch of other places too.
I think the big thing here, the big innovation, is the ordinals numbering system.
So utility is driven by this whole idea of springboarding us in terms of innovation by using micropayments and unlocking all these different new ways of doing things.
Decentralization, the meme, as people think of it, I don't think exists at all, anywhere.
Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin wallet, blockchain, stablecoins, MetaNet, the evolution of money. Everybody is talking about Bitcoin today, but what exactly is it? Learn the basics from experts. Learn what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it matters. Blockchain 101, your ultimate guide to the fundamentals of blockchain.